Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another thought provoking episode of Xraised, where knowledge meets inspiration in the intricate dance of industry evolution. I'm your host, Miles, and today we're stepping into the fascinating crossroads of law and tech, where courtroom wisdom meets AI powered precision. And our guest doesn't just sit at this crossroads, she's practically built the intersection. She's an award winning barrister, an author who's been shaping complex commercial law for over 20 years now. Named most influential CEO 2025 in legal tech and widely respected for her fearless advocacy, sharp intellect, and ethical leadership, she's leading a global conversation about what AI can do for lawyers and, more importantly, what it can't. She's the mind behind the company pioneering AI powered legal research from first principles. Back to our show, who's basically my co host at this point, is the founder and CEO of MiAI Law, Laina Chan. Hi, Laina.
Hi, Miles.
It's always a pleasure to have you on X-Rays. And today we're diving into the human touch in an AI-driven legal world. So, starting with my first question, if AI can now retrieve and rank every precedent in seconds, many people wonder what's really left for lawyers to do. I mean, where does the human lawyer still hold the irreplaceable edge?
Okay, well, let's just unpack this. First of all, AI generally cannot rank. If you want it to rank, then you have to write the algorithms and train this. Well, you have to write the algorithms to cause it to rank. It doesn't rank by itself.
Uh-huh.
So so that has to be guided by a human being. An AI by itself, a language model by itself, ChatGPT, Gemini, etc., is not going to rank for you. So that's where you need the human intervention.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And then it's also not instant, but then it might take a few minutes to do this. But yes, I guess in the context of comparing if a human was to do the work relatively, it is instant.
Mm-hmm.
But being a lawyer is just much more than understanding the law theoretically.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why when you come out of law school, you really know nothing. You don't you may know theoretically. You may think, oh, Lord Denning, for example, ran that really brilliant argument, or not ran, but wrote a judgment and came up with a really novel idea, and I'm going to run that too down to the local court. It doesn't work. Or I'm going to run that argument, some clever argument that's really, really technical down in the district court. It doesn't work. So you may think you know
Yeah.
theoretically what the law is, but you have to put real life experience on what arguments are likely to be accepted by the courts and what arguments are unlikely to be accepted by the courts. And you can only learn that from trial and error and by losing, by trying,
Yeah.
by trying and failing and then getting the reaction of the judges. We go, well, we're not going to run that argument because
Mm-hmm.
ultimately, in my experience, the judges do not want to be overturned on appeal. So if you are running really technical arguments that are, a bit of a stretch, it's first of all, as a young lawyer, it's hard to get an audience before the court anyway. They might not be very open to what you're saying. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's different if, for example, you're Noel Hutley, who's like the number one commercial barrister in Australia. You show up and, and there's a lot of deference to him and they'll give him an audience and they'll listen to him. It doesn't necessarily mean that they will accept what he says.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you have to go all the way up to the High Court to get your new novel argument accepted. But that comes from judgment and experience and understanding what the best pathway to getting your client the outcome that they want is.
Yeah.
I can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
AI can identify all the clever arguments for you, but it can't tell you. I don't think it can really tell you what is likely to work and what is not likely to work. Or sometimes it can. I mean, it's very clean cut, right? But then we're talking at the finer edges of the law.
Mm-hmm.
A human being a lawyer, a properly trained lawyer with experience has to make that call.
Yeah, and we cannot just let luck through AI make all the decisions. And that's such a great point. You're reminding us that knowing the case isn't the same as knowing which case to run. And I remember what you said last time. It's like baking or cooking. Just because I can Google a recipe doesn't mean I can plate a Michelin star dish, you know. Context, judgment, and of course, storytelling, that's where the chef, or in this case, the lawyer, really shines. And following that thought, Lena, where do you see the limits of AI in legal practice? What are the aspects of lawyering that, no matter how advanced the tech gets, will always remain uniquely human?
I think I think in trials where you have all these witnesses and the witnesses are being cross-examined, you really need the human being judge to watch the witness, their demeanor, how they react to the questions, you, how they how they react.
The body
Okay.
language.
Yeah, their body language, their facial expressions, etc. And I think it's the human judge in that context understanding what the documentary evidence actually says, knowing watching the whole drama unfold before the judge is the
Mhm,
best person to make the judgment call of whether a witness should be accepted or should not be accepted.
mhm.
And I know that, eventually AI can be taught to AI already does facial recognition, right? So AI can already be taught to pick up the cues of whether a person is telling the truth, not telling the truth. That comes from all body language. And there's a lot
Yeah.
of study has been done as to what are the cues when a person is lying. But I still think that in the whole theater of the court, it's not just the documents, it's not just the submissions, it's the whole complex interplay of the counsel, the legal submissions, the witnesses, what is happening, the cross-examination, the documentary evidence, and pulling it all together, and the judge's experience and instinct in
Yeah.
picking up
Instinct.
whether well, it could be like Daniel Kahneman's slow thinking, fast thinking. It's probably
Yeah.
slow thinking built up over years of experience
Mhm.
to just work out what should be accepted, what shouldn't be accepted. I can't. I mean, maybe one day an AI can do all that as well, but then that would be trying to build an AI that can behave like a human,
Yeah.
and there's so much going on that I think a properly designed AI tool can definitely help the judge, but I
Mhm.
don't think it can completely replace the judge.
Exactly. Because strategy, persuasion, and ethics, those don't run on algorithms. And I like how you framed it. It's not about whether AI can answer, but whether it should. That moral filter is something no software update will ever be able to install, right? And that brings me to something I think a lot of people overlook, Lena. Where is the human touch most indispensable in practice? I mean, what moments in a lawyer's day-to-day work like yours absolutely demand human judgment?
Okay, well, I'll give you an example. I've designed my AI law to not replace human judgment. That is on purpose.
Uh-huh.
I haven't designed it so everything is automated. And I know there are some tools out there that are helping lawyers with due diligence, for example, where the entire process is automated. And so that you take that human out of the loop. And
Mhm.
I don't agree with that. I just don't agree that first of all, I think it's an insult to what us lawyers actually do and what we actually
Right.
bring to the table. And so, for example, I had to draft an agreement last week, or the week before last, and I needed obviously to take instructions. And I prepared the draft agreement and I uploaded it into my AI for contract review and analysis. And it analyzed the contract, and I've designed it to be neutral, completely neutral. So it will tell you best practice, and it will go through and it'll analyze the contract and it'll tell you clause by clause which ones are of concern and which ones are not. And then for the ones that are of concern, it will tell you why it's of concern, the reasoning for it, and the case authority for saying why it's a concern, and then it will recommend a suggested alternative. But that doesn't mean that you always have to accept the suggested alternative, because as
Mm-hmm.
a lawyer, you know what your client's objectives are and you know what they want to achieve. It doesn't mean that you go into the negotiation
Mm-hmm.
uh, being completely fair and unbiased, right? You have to go into the negotiation knowing, okay, there's a risk that this clause may not be enforced. For example, this clause may be considered to be a penalty and may not be enforceable. And so you can then uh, adjust your drafting or advise your client of the risks that a certain clause may or may not be enforceable. And then you can take steps to mitigate that. But it doesn't mean, but that's a human judgment, bearing in mind exactly what the objectives of your clients are. So, for example, if you put in a restraints of trade clause, you know that restraints of trade are not enforceable in all scenarios, right? So if the restraint is not reasonable, etc., then it cannot be enforceable. But we also know that there are cases where one of the mechanisms that are employed by lawyers is to put in a cascading set of restraints so that you can say, you can't work for a competitor for 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, etc. And then the cases say that can work if you say that it's for the court to decide which one is a reasonable restraint, and you can then the court can then exercise its what not power, I guess power to order that a reasonable restraint is 6 months, but not 9 and 12, and you can do drafting techniques to make sure that the clause, whatever survives the court's intervention, is still enforceable. But that is again a human judgment, and I just think
Yeah.
that a lawyer needs to do that. And I just don't understand lawyers who abrogate their entire responsibility to lawyering to AI, because especially today's state of AI tools, it's just not super intelligent. And you should not be abrogating your responsibility as a lawyer to AI. And if you do that, there's just going to be a massive increase in professional negligence and professional
Mm-hmm.
malpractice
Mm-hmm.
cases.
And I agree. Those are pure human crafts, spot on. Cross-examination, negotiation, those split-second calls in high-pressure situations. I mean, I think I've been watching a lot of law-related series on Netflix. There's a lot. So no AI is going to adjust tone mid-cross or read a witness's nerves. So pushing this further, Lena, lawyers aren't just conveyors of information, you're persuaders. How do lawyers actually turn raw information into persuasion in ways AI simply can't replicate ever?
Can't it? I mean, you can guide it.
Mm-hmm.
I just think you always need the human in the loop. The AI is there to help you. It's not there to replace you. And if you let the AI replace you, if you think that you can use AI without applying any independent judgment, without amending any of the AI output, then you're basically proving that as a lawyer, you don't bring any additional value to the table. And if you
Mm-hmm.
do that, if you are happy to delegate your entire responsibility as a lawyer to your AI tool, then why should the company keep you, or why should the law firm keep you on? I just don't understand what value you bring to the table.
Mm-hmm.
So for all those lawyers out there who are terrified that they're going to be replaced by AI, then show why you shouldn't be replaced by AI. Show your firm or your clients what value add you bring to the table.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the most important thing. And in the last week's interview, when
Mm-hmm.
we were talking to Tim, and he
Yeah.
said the most important thing that they're trying to teach their students is critical thinking and critical analysis. I think everyone agrees that that's what's really important in this age of AI, that you must do that. You mustn't just allow the AI to do your whole job. So I don't understand why some lawyers are willing to do that. And that is why I have designed my AI the way I have designed it, to force you to still think and to force you to bring critical analysis and decision making to the lawyering process. And in fact, we're also implementing a new feature where how all our reports have hyperlinks to the
Yeah.
pinpoint references in the underlying cases and legislation. We can tell if the user is not following those links. So ever so often we have a pop-up box that's going to come up and it's going to highlight a particular hyperlink and it's going to say, we notice that you haven't been checking your sources
Oh.
and check your sources.
Mhm.
Because I was speaking to my friend who's actually runs Google Asia. And I had said to him, the responsibility to check is not mine. The responsibility to check is the lawyers. And while we can say it in all our terms and conditions, etc., that you have to check, we're not guaranteeing the output. You have to check. I can't make them check. And then he said, but you can make it so that you encourage them to check. So it was his idea to do that. And I and
Okay.
I said, okay. So I spoke to my developers that day on Saturday and I said, I want to do this. And then they said, but all the hyperlinks are there. And I said, yes, I understand all the hyperlinks are there, but this is about ethical and responsible AI. And
Mm,
so we are encouraging them
mm,
to check the sources.
mm. And I like how you put it together, Lena. I mean, I completely agree with you. It's such a cool feature of my AI law then. And AI can give us memory but not meaning. A machine can list the facts, but it takes someone, a lawyer specifically, to weave them into a story that convinces a judge, a jury, or even a skeptical client. So now, looking ahead, AI tools are only going to become more precise and widely available if every lawyer has access to that same perfect memory that you mentioned. What, in your view, will separate the great advocates from the rest?
Okay, I'll go back to this. First of all, for example, every language model, I think they have a mixture of experts. So not every single language model will, when you put in an API call to ChatGPT, for example, you don't know which model you're actually going to get.
Uh-huh.
Even if it's like, let's say ChatGPT 5 or ChatGPT 4 or whatever it is you want to use, you don't always get the exact same model because they have a mixture of experts. And honestly, some experts are better than others. So you never know, you're never going to get an identical report. The substance will always be the same, but there'll always be minor differences between the way it has been analyzed because we're dealing with a mixture of experts. Then
Mhm.
your prompt, what context you give to the model will determine the research query that's actually being carried out by the model. And at the end of the day, you then need to make the judgment call of which strategy you're going to adopt for your client to get you to the outcome that you're looking for the client. And we've always had cases and precedents. All AI is doing is increasing your productivity, and no two lawyers are ever the same anyway. So if you just look at AI or MiAI Law as a productivity tool, we are getting you to the answer quicker and helping you unearth maybe buried authorities that you yourself may not have had capacity to unearth in the limited time available. But that's all we're doing. We're increasing productivity. We're not actually changing. We may be changing the way lawyers do their work, but we're not actually changing the work that lawyers do.
Mhm.
And so I don't see why, just because you have AI accelerating your work and increasing your productivity, that will
Mhm.
suddenly mean that all lawyers will become the same. It just doesn't, I just don't see why that would follow.
Yeah. Well, again, the edge still belongs to the lawyer who can make courageous
Yes.
calls, build credibility, and tell a story that really sticks. And, I remember, I think I read somewhere you said memory preserves law, but judgment progresses law. I read it somewhere in one of the things that you shared with me, and that reminds me of that. Well, what a conversation, Laina. If today proved anything, I guess it's that AI can sharpen the tools of the trade, but it's still, as you said, human judgment, strategy, accountability that keep the legal system functioning and trustworthy. Thank you so
It's
much
only
for
a
this.
tool. That's right. It's only a tool. It doesn't
Mhm.
replace the art of lawyering.
Yeah. And I think that applies beyond law too. Whether you're in business, education, or even just managing your daily life, AI can inform us, but still up to us to decide, persuade, and stand behind the choices that we make.
Yes.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Lena, again, for
I mean,
explaining how.
that's the difference between a great lawyer and a blah lawyer. If you want to
You
be
can
a great
relate
lawyer,
so much.
if you want to be a great lawyer, remember
I
the
mean,
AI
who
can't
wouldn't want to be
replace you.
great, right?
Yeah. You
Well,
also, that's what they want.
well, thank you so much again, Lena, for explaining how tech and humanity can coexist in law without one replacing the other.
Thanks, Miles.
Thank you. So, to our audience, if you'd like to learn more about MiAI Law and how they're revolutionizing legal research with AI powered precision, head over to their website at myai.law. That's MIAI.LAW. I appreciate you guys for staying with us. We'll definitely be back with more conversations that raise ideas, raise leaders like Lena, and raise the future. This has been your host, Miles, with Lena. Stay focused and inspired with Xraised.